Today I'm telling the story of when one of my subscribers nearly got into a car crash. So if you want to be featured in one of these videos, then you can send in your story times over on Instagram and, you might end up in a story time video. So anyway, this all starts off now. We're going to rename the subscriber to, we're going to call him Charlie. So Charlie was age 19 and he had a friend named Oscar who was basically taking him to go around the city. So basically Charlie got picked up on a Sunday morning about 2 years ago, so he's 21 at this time. And, the first 30 minutes of the ride was fine, he just got picked up from where he lived. And then Oscar basically took him back to the town. Now you might be thinking, why didn't Charlie just drive himself if he's 19? Well, Charlie doesn't actually have his license yet. Charlie lives in Australia and he's only got his L plates, which basically means that he can't drive yet, like on his own. He needs to have his P plates to do that. I don't know how it is in America, but in Australia at least, if you have your L plates, which is basically, you can get them when you're 16 and it basically means you're a learner driver. You can drive with someone else in the passenger seat, but you can't drive on your own, so it is really restricting, but that's basically what I'm doing right now, right? I'm 17 and I've got my L plates. So Charlie's doing the same thing, and obviously, right, Oscar, so Oscar's like 20, right? Oscar's got his P plates, meaning that Oscar can drive anywhere. But Oscar can't let Charlie drive in the car with him, if that makes sense, because you actually have to have your full license to be a supervising driver. Anyway, right, so Oscar's taking Charlie into town. So they go around for a little bit, the first 30 minutes is fine. So Oscar ends up running out of gas, so they have to basically go to a petrol station and get petrol. So they end up filling up their gas, and then they end up going to Macca's for lunch and end up just getting some food and sitting there for probably about 20 minutes. So everything was fine, right? Like they were just having a good day, they were just chilling out, having fun. Then they went to this basketball court and started playing basketball until about 2 p.m. So that was all fine, everything was going well. And then they got back onto the road. Now, when they got back onto the road, this is really where the story time starts. So one thing I didn't mention is that Oscar works like a really, really late night job. Like I'm talking like literally staying up till like 3 a.m. He works in retail and he works a night shift that ends at like 3 in the morning, which is a very, very like, it's a very like, how do I say it? It's a time that not a lot of people would be working to, right? Like normally most people would finish at like 5 p.m. or something like that, maybe the latest like 7 or 9 p.m. But 3 in the morning, so Oscar was working until 3 a.m. at a retail store. So obviously, right, Oscar's kind of tired, right? Like he went to sleep at 3, so the subscribers told me that he went to sleep at 3 and then he woke up at like 6 or 7. So obviously, right, not a lot of sleep, right? So obviously driving is possible, but it's not really safe. Please, by the way, if you're watching this video, if you're like really tired, don't go out driving. Like it's really not a safe idea at all. So anyway, Oscar was kind of tired when these two were driving. So Oscar was sort of just driving around, they were just doing their thing. Then Oscar asked Charlie, Charlie, what do you want to do? Like we played basketball, like what do you want to do now? And before Charlie can even answer, he says, oh, do you want to go play soccer or something? He looks over to Oscar and Oscar is literally just there, like starting to fall asleep at the wheel. And obviously Charlie's terrified, right? So Charlie slaps Oscar. It's like, yo, Oscar, like you're on the road. What are you doing? And Oscar's like, oh shit, bro, my bad. Like, I'm sorry. So then they keep driving for a little bit. I mean, honestly, at that point, right, if Oscar was that tired, they probably should have just pulled over and just slept for a little bit. But Oscar, being the absolute mad lad, decided, nah, I'm gonna keep going. So he ends up so he keeps going for a little bit. They end up driving for probably about 10-20 minutes more, and then it gets to a point where Oscar's like, yo, bro, like I need to go for a sleep. And Charlie's like, yeah, you think? Like we're gonna crash the car if you keep doing that. So they end up pulling over into a petrol station, and then they end up sleeping for about 30 minutes. Now Charlie tells me that nothing really happened after that, so he sort of just sat there for a little bit, and everything was all good. But the story time doesn't end there, because obviously, right, of course it can't end here. There's got to be something more. So Oscar ends up waking up and he's like, yo, I think I'm ready to go. Like I'm feeling pretty refreshed. So this is probably about after like a 30-minute nap. And Charlie's like, yeah, all right, sure. Just don't like fall asleep at the wheel again, please. So Oscar then puts the car into reverse, and then he ends up backing out into the highway. So he turns into the highway. Everything's all good. Like it's just a normal drive from at least this point on. So they end up driving for about 5 more minutes, and it got to a point where Charlie was starting to notice something very, very strange. There were a couple things that were going wrong. Firstly, the car was starting to like vibrate like very, very like heavily. Obviously, right, when you're driving a car, it vibrates like to a certain extent, because like the gas is going on, and you're moving the car, so it's obviously gonna like bump around or whatever. But Charlie tells me that the car was like it was vibrating a lot more than normally. So he sort of looks up, he's like, yo, Oscar, is the car all good? Like should we probably get this serviced? And Oscar's like, yeah, we probably should. Then about 2 minutes later, Charlie noticed that the car just doesn't start vibrating now. It's starting to swerve sort of all over the place. Now, Oscar wasn't going out into the other lanes, but like he was getting very close to the lines. So Charlie's like, yo, Oscar, are you good? Like, are you sure you're alright? And Oscar's like, yeah, man, I'm fine. But Charlie could clearly tell, right, that Oscar was getting very, very tired at this point. Even though he just had like a 30-minute power nap, it really didn't do much, and he was still like very, very tired, because obviously he had like 2 hours hours sleep that last night. So Oscar, you know, he wasn't really doing too well. So he's just sitting there, you know, he's just going along the highway, he's just doing his thing. You know, he's doing it well enough to the point where Charlie isn't really too concerned, even though he's kind of like, he's kind of drifting off into the other lanes, but not really. Now keep in mind that this was like a Saturday afternoon and it wasn't really too busy on the highway that they were on, so it wasn't that bad. But then this is where stuff really starts to kick off, because then it got to a point where about 5 minutes after all this happens and after like Charlie starts, now when I say the other lane, I mean like the emergency lanes. So on the highway that they were on, there were like 2 lanes, and there was like an emergency lane if you needed to stop or whatever, like if you're having an oil leak, or you know, you popped a tire, something like that, you could just go into the emergency lane, sit there, you know, put in your hazards and just do your thing. Now Oscar was not slowly going into the emergency lane. He like full just ended up jerking the car and just going into the lane. Now keep in mind, right, they were going 80 kilometers an hour, so Charlie literally had to act really quick. So Charlie sees this and instantly puts his hand on the wheel. He's like, Oscar, like, what are you doing? And by this point, right, Oscar is completely passed out. Now, still to this day, we don't know what happened to Oscar, but Charlie basically tells me, right, Oscar literally just passed out at the wheel. And it wasn't like gradual, right? Like it wasn't just like, oh yeah, like he sort of drifted off, and you know, like it was like there was a lot of warning signs. He literally went from like kind of fine, like sort of drifting off a little bit, to just full pelt, and he just passed out completely. So Oscar passes out, right, and Charlie's in just complete shock. He's like, oh my god, this guy literally just passed out of the wheel. Like what am I supposed to do? So he yanks the wheel, tries to put it into place and make sure that like that they didn't end up like running into a fence or something. Now the lucky part about this, right, is that there were trees probably a good 10 meters away from the road, and there was like a fence on the opposite side of those trees, meaning that they had plenty of room, right? So like there really wasn't much like stress of them, and I guess crashing into a tree or a fence. So Charlie takes that to his advantage and like starts sort of like hobbling over into the grass area. But then all of a sudden, right, like Charlie realizes another problem. Oscar's foot is on the pedal, right? His foot is on the pedal, and it is and since like he's weighed down, the pedal just keeps getting pushed on harder, meaning that the car is accelerating faster. So at this point the car was going about 80 kilometers an hour, which was the speed limit. Now since Oscar was passed out, his foot was just going heavily and more heavy onto the pedal, meaning that he was going even faster. So at this point Oscar's like, oh shit, I should probably do something about this. So he immediately grabs Oscar's leg and throws it off the pedal. And he didn't throw onto the brake because he had the realization that if I slam his foot onto the brake, I'm gonna go flying through the windshield. Because Charlie tells me that they sped up to literally like 120 kilometers an hour within like 10 seconds. Like keep in mind, right, I'm explaining this in slow motion. This all happened within like 10 seconds. So Charlie, right, so Charlie's holding 2 things. Charlie is holding Oscar's leg to make sure that it doesn't slam on the brake or slam on the accelerator, and holding the steering wheel to make sure that they don't crash into a tree. And all this time, right, Oscar is still passed out. Like Charlie's like trying to nudge him or whatever, and like slap him and say, yo, wake up, like wake up. And he's just not waking up. Like he's literally just sitting there passed out. Now keep in mind, right, so one theory that I've got is that it was a really hot day. The subscriber tells me it was like 35 degrees, so it probably could have been something to do with heat stroke. But at the end of the day, right, like you never know. It could have been something worse, like we never know. But basically after this happens, right, so Charlie instantly, like, he starts sort of tapping the brake. He literally grabs Oscar's foot and starts like gently tapping the brake to make sure that they don't, like, first of all die, and secondly just like blow up the car or something like that. So Charlie starts tapping Oscar's foot on the brake, and then it ends up like slowly coming to a stop. And then about 2 minutes later, Oscar starts to like slowly blink his eyes. So Charlie had come to a complete stop. He sat there collecting his thoughts for about like 2 minutes. Then Oscar like starts then Oscar starts blinking a little bit, and Charlie's like, Jesus Christ, Oscar, like what, like wake up. And Oscar's like, yo, are you alright? Like what's going on? Like why are we stopped? He's like, bro, you literally almost just killed us. Like we just went off the side of the road. You put your foot on the accelerator and you passed out. He's like, bro, did I just pass out at the wheel? He said, yes, you passed out at the wheel. And yeah, so that's basically the story time of how one of my subscribers literally almost got into a car crash because their friend literally passed out at the wheel. Pretty insane story time. I like that was pretty insane in my opinion. If you guys want to send in story times, let me know on my Instagram at GliderGuyYT. Yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.